The streets of the small kingdom glimmered with lights as the winter solstice approached. Snow fell softly, blanketing the cobblestone roads in white. Lanterns hung from every corner, casting a golden glow that made the frost sparkle like tiny diamonds. People hurried along, carrying gifts, laughing, and warming their hands by the smoke of street fires. Yet, amidst all this cheer, Elara walked alone, her heart heavy with hope and fear. Tonight was supposed to be different. Tonight was the night of her blind date. She had dressed carefully, choosing a deep green cloak that matched the color of her eyes, and polished the simple silver necklace her mother had left her. She had imagined meeting someone kind, someone who would understand the loneliness that sometimes shadowed her life. Her steps took her to the grand hall where Lord Malric awaited. He was a man known throughout the kingdom, tall, handsome, with eyes that seemed to hold storms, but he was also known for his coldness, for his reluctance to smile, for whispers that no love had ever survived him. Still, Elara had hoped. When she entered the hall, candles flickered, and the warmth of the fireplace drew her forward. She saw Malric across the room, standing stiffly with perfect posture, his dark coat trimmed with silver. For a moment, she felt a thrill. Perhaps the rumors were false. Perhaps beneath his stern exterior, there was warmth. But the moment was fleeting. Malric's eyes flicked over her and then away, his expression unreadable. He did not greet her with kindness. Instead, he spoke curtly to the host, dismissing her before she could even approach. Elara's chest tightened. She had prepared for disappointment, yes, but the sting of public rejection was sharper than she had imagined. She turned away, trying to hide the tears that threatened to fall. The laughter of other guests echoed behind her, a cruel contrast to the ache in her heart. She wandered outside, letting the snow catch on her hair and cloak. The cold was biting, but it was a welcome distraction from the heat of embarrassment. The streets were quieter here, lined with tall evergreens dusted in white, their branches bending under the weight of frost. Each step she took left a small print in the snow, a reminder that she was alone. Then she heard a soft voice, small but clear. "Are you lost?" Elara looked down. A little girl stood before her, no more than 6 or 7 years old. Her hair was the color of moonlight, and her eyes shone like the lanterns hanging from the streets. She wore a tiny cloak that did little to protect her from the cold, yet she smiled at Elara with an unusual confidence. I'm fine," Elara said softly, brushing snow from her cloak. But something about the girl's gaze made her pause. There was a strange weight behind those eyes, as if the child had seen more of the world than any child should. "You don't look fine," the girl replied simply. "Your heart is heavy. You need a home." Elara blinked, surprised by the words. "A home?" she repeated, unsure if the girl meant a physical place or something else. The girl nodded seriously. "Yes. My home is lonely, but you can help. Will you be my new mom?" Elara froze. The words hung in the air like snowflakes, delicate and impossible to ignore. She had not expected this. Not here, not now, not from a stranger who seemed too wise for her years. Yet something inside her stirred a deep longing she hadn't recognized until this moment. Before she could answer, a sound caught her attention. From the shadows, a tall figure emerged. He was cloaked in black, his presence both commanding and distant. Lord Malric. Her heart sank again. But this time, not from rejection, from confusion and fear. He studied the little girl and then her, his expression unreadable. "Who is this?" he asked, his voice low, carrying a weight of authority. She said I could be her new mom," Elara answered, her voice trembling. Malric's eyes narrowed, and he took a step closer. "That child is not for the taking. She is special." Elara didn't understand, but something in his tone told her to take the girl seriously. She stepped protectively in front of the child, instinctively shielding her. "I don't want to take her. I want to help," she said. The little girl tugged at her cloak, smiling faintly. Malric's gaze softened slightly, though it did not lose its intensity. He knelt to the child's height, speaking in a voice that was almost gentle. "Do you understand what you ask, little one? To bind a human heart to mine is dangerous. Many have tried, many have failed." The girl nodded, unafraid. "I know. But she is brave." Alara felt a shiver, not from the cold but from the strange energy that seemed to radiate from both of them. Something ancient and powerful hovered in the air, a force she could not name, yet felt in every pulse of her heartbeat. "You do not understand," Malric said to her now. "This child, she carries a curse. My family's curse. Anyone who binds their heart to mine or hers risks suffering beyond imagination." Ilara's stomach turned, but she did not step back. Instead, she looked at the child's wide eyes, at the trust and hope within them, and felt a courage she did not know she possessed. "Then we will face it together," she said softly. The little girl beamed. "Yes, together." Malric's expression darkened, torn between warning and admiration. "Very well," he said finally, rising. "But know this, the curse does not forgive. The heart you offer may be shattered." Alara took a deep breath. The snow swirled around them, lanterns casting long shadows on the ground, and she felt that, for the first time in her life, she was standing on the edge of something larger than herself. Something that would change her forever. The little girl grabbed her hand, holding it tightly. "Don't be afraid," she said. "If you stay with me, he might not be lonely anymore. But you must be brave." Alara nodded, feeling the weight of the words. Malric watched silently, a storm behind his eyes, and for the first time, she saw a flicker of vulnerability in him. He was not just a cold nobleman. He was a man haunted by loss, by duty, by something darker she could not yet understand. As they stood in the snow, a shadow moved at the edge of the square, unseen by them. A quiet, lingering presence that seemed to observe and wait, as if the night itself were watching. Alara felt a chill, but it was not from the cold, it was anticipation, the sense that the world had shifted, and nothing would ever be the same again. The little girl looked up at her, eyes shining. "Will you come with me?" she asked. Alara glanced at Malric, whose expression had softened to something unreadable, a mixture of warning and acceptance. She looked at the child again, her small hand warm in hers, and felt a spark of purpose. "Yes," she said finally. "I will come with you." Snow swirled around them as they began to walk toward Malric's estate, the lanterns flickering like stars in the night. Behind them, the shadow lingered, patient and silent, as if waiting for the right moment to step forward. Ilara's heart was heavy with fear and hope, filled with the ache of rejection and the thrill of possibility. The night stretched before them, dark and endless, carrying the promise of magic, danger, and perhaps redemption. And somewhere in the quiet corners of the snowy kingdom, the wind whispered a single warning. The heart that dares to love may be the heart that must pay the price. Ilara did not know what lay ahead, only that she could not turn back. She had been rejected once, left to wander in the cold, but now she had a purpose, a child's trust, and a strange, powerful man by her side. And for the first time in a long while, she felt alive. The snow fell heavier as they approached the gates of the ancient estate, its towers looming like silent guardians. Malric opened the doors with a solemn hand, and as Ilara stepped inside, the warmth of the fire met her, but so did the shadow of the unknown. The journey had begun, and the winter of rejection was only the first step toward something neither of them could yet understand. The little girl squeezed her hand again and whispered, "Stay with me, and be brave. Everything will change tonight." Ilara nodded, heart trembling. She did not yet know how true those words would become. The gates of Malric's estate creaked shut behind them, the sound swallowed by the falling snow. Inside, the manor was immense, cold and silent, with shadows dancing across the high stone walls. Candles flickered in sconces, throwing golden light on the faded portraits of ancestors, whose eyes seemed to follow every visitor. The air smelled faintly of pine, smoke, and something older, a sense of history and secrecy that clung to the walls like frost. Elara's breath caught in her throat as she took in the grandeur. Despite the warmth of the fire, the house felt distant, almost alive with memories. The little girl tugged at her hand, guiding her deeper into the hall. "You must be careful here," the child said, her voice barely above a whisper. "There are things you cannot see, things that linger from long ago." Elara nodded, though she did not fully understand. She looked up at Malric, who stood near the hearth, his tall frame stiff, shoulders drawn back as if carrying invisible chains. His eyes, dark and intense, met hers for a brief moment, and she saw in them a mixture of warning, sorrow, and something like longing. "You are brave to follow her," he said finally, his voice low, almost like the sound of wind through the trees. "Most would turn back at the first sign of the unknown." Elara swallowed. I want to help," she said simply. Malric's gaze shifted to the little girl, whose pale fingers clutched her cloak. "You do not understand," he said, almost to himself. "This child, she carries a curse. A shadow that has haunted my family for generations." Elara froze. She had heard whispers of Malric's tragic reputation, but she had never imagined that a curse could be real, and yet, in the hush of the manor, it felt tangible. "What kind of curse?" she asked cautiously. He hesitated. "Love brings sorrow. Anyone who becomes close, anyone who touches her heart, risks losing everything they hold dear. My ancestors tried to break it, but the curse is patient. It waits for those who dare to hope." The little girl looked up at him, unafraid. "I do not fear it," she said softly. "Not if she is here." Elara's heart ached at the loyalty in the child's voice. She felt a sudden, fierce protectiveness. Somehow, this fragile being had chosen her. Somehow, in that choice, she felt a purpose that no rejection or heartbreak could have given her. Malric studied her silently, as if weighing her soul. "You do not understand the danger," he said, his voice sharp now. "The curse, it does not forgive." Elara stepped closer to the child. "Then we will face it together," she said firmly. "Whatever it is, we will face it together." For a moment, silence hung in the air, broken only by the crackle of the fire. Malric's expression softened slightly. Though it did not lose its intensity, there was something about her courage, about the way she refused to turn away, that stirred something long buried in him. "Very well," he said finally, his tone cautious. "But know this, the path you choose is not without pain. The curse may test you. It may twist your heart, and it may demand sacrifices you cannot imagine." Elara met his gaze steadily. "I understand," she said. "I am not afraid." The little girl clutched her hand more tightly. "Then let us begin," she said. "There is much you must see. The house, and what hides within it." Malric motioned for them to follow, leading them down a long corridor lined with doors that seemed older than time. Some were closed, sealed with heavy locks, while others were ajar, revealing rooms filled with forgotten belongings, dust-covered furniture, and portraits whose painted eyes glimmered faintly in the candlelight. "This house remembers everything," Malric explained. "It remembers love, sorrow, betrayal, and it does not forgive easily. Some of its memories are dangerous. You must be careful what you touch, what you hear, and what you feel." Elara felt a shiver run down her spine. She had entered expecting a simple visit, maybe a night of explanation or apology. Instead, she had stepped into a living story, one filled with magic, grief, and history. And she was at the center of it. The little girl led her to a small, hidden room behind a tapestry. Within, a tiny bed was covered with a blanket stitched with symbols Elara did not recognize. A small wooden chest sat at the foot of the bed, carved with runes that glowed faintly when touched. "This is her room," the little girl said softly. "It is protected." Elara knelt beside the bed, brushing a strand of moonlit hair from the child's face. "You're safe," she whispered. "I will protect you." The girl smiled faintly, eyes glimmering with trust, and something older, wiser than her years. "I know," she said. "That is why I chose you." Malric lingered in the doorway, his dark eyes studying Elara, as if measuring her strength, her patience, her heart. "You are not just choosing a child," he said finally. "You are stepping into a family, and into a legacy, one that carries shadows." Elara looked at him, her gaze steady. "Then, we face the shadows together." For the first time, Malric's lips curved in the faintest hint of a smile, though it was brief, almost sorrowful. "Bravery is rare," he said softly, "and often dangerous." Days passed in the manor, each one filled with lessons and revelations. The little girl, who called herself Lyra, taught Elara to see the hidden details of the estate. Secret doors, hidden alcoves, rooms where light and shadow played tricks on the eye. She showed her the symbols carved in the wood and stone protective runes, marks of memory, traces of the curse that bound the house and the family together. Elara learned quickly. She listened to the whispers of the wind, felt the flicker of magic in the air, and began to understand the depth of the bond she was forming not just with Lyra, but with Malric as well. Despite his stern exterior, she sensed the pain he carried, the loneliness that had hardened his heart, and slowly, very slowly, she began to see the man beneath the shadow. One evening, as the fire flickered low and the snow fell silently outside, Elara found herself alone with Malric in the grand hall. He stood by a window, looking out at the frozen gardens. She hesitated, unsure if she should speak, then finally said, "Do you ever wonder if the curse can be broken?" Malric turned, his eyes meeting hers with a mix of sadness and caution. "I have wondered," he said quietly, "but it is not just a matter of breaking a spell. It is about facing the darkness in ourselves. Facing the parts of our hearts we fear. Many have tried, and many have failed. The curse tests more than love. It tests courage, loyalty, and the strength to forgive even oneself." Elara's heart ached at the truth of his words. She thought of Lyra, small and trusting, and felt a determination that surprised even her. "Then we will face it together," she said again, her voice steady. Malric studied her in silence. For a moment, the shadows in his eyes seemed to waver, as if hope dangerous and fragile was stirring. Then he turned back to the window, voice low, "Very well. But understand this, the curse does not forgive easily. Every bond you form will be tested. Every trust you give may be returned with pain." That night, Elara lay awake in a guest room near Lyra's chamber. She could hear the soft breathing of the child through the thin walls, and she felt a warmth in her chest unlike anything she had known. For the first time, she felt part of something larger than herself, something filled with love, fear, and possibility. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying a faint hint of danger, of magic, and of secrets yet to be revealed. Somewhere in the estate, shadows moved, and the house itself seemed to watch, patient and knowing. Elara closed her eyes and made a silent promise. She would protect this child, and she would not turn away from the man who carried so much sorrow. They were bound together now, by choice and by fate, and whatever trials came, she would face them with courage. The night deepened, and the snow outside grew heavier, blanketing the world in white. And as she drifted into sleep, a soft whisper echoed in her mind. Faint but clear, love can break the chains, but only if the heart is ready to face the shadows. And somewhere, unseen, the darkness waited, patient, knowing, and ready to test the bonds that had only just begun. The next morning, the estate was shrouded in a thick mist that clung to the towers and gardens like a veil. The air was crisp, each breath visible as a cloud in the light of the rising sun. Elara stood by the frost-covered window, watching the snow swirl in delicate patterns. Lyra tugged at her sleeve, eyes bright with anticipation. "Come," the little girl said softly. "There is something you must see. Something that will help you understand." Elara followed, her cloak brushing the frozen ground. Malric fell into step behind them, silent but vigilant, as if he could sense dangers Elara could not yet imagine. The manor was quiet, almost expectant, and even the portraits along the corridors seemed to lean forward, observing their movements. Lyra led them through a hidden passage behind a tapestry. The corridor was narrow and dark, lined with stone walls etched with strange symbols that glimmered faintly in the candlelight. The air was colder here, tinged with a scent of pine and something else, something ancient. "This way," Lyra whispered, guiding them to a door that appeared ordinary. Yet it radiated a faint energy that made the hairs on Elara's arms stand on end. Malric's hand rested on the doorknob. "Beyond this door is not just a room," he said, his voice low. "It is a part of the curse. It will test hearts, reveal truths, and demand courage. You cannot retreat once you enter." Elara swallowed but did not step back. "Then we face it together," she said, gripping Lyra's small hand tightly. The door opened, and a rush of cold air swept through the corridor, carrying the scent of snow and something older magic, silent and powerful. Inside, the room was vast, larger than any room she had ever seen. The walls shimmered with faint light, and the floor seemed to ripple beneath their feet, like ice over a hidden stream. Strange, shadowy figures danced at the edges of her vision, disappearing whenever she tried to focus on them. Lyra stepped forward, her small voice firm. "The curse will test us here. You must hold your heart steady." As they moved deeper into the room, the shadows coalesced into shapes, memories of Malric's past, of his family's sorrow, of moments filled with regret and grief. The first apparition was a young boy, crying in a snow-covered courtyard, calling out for someone who could never return. Malric froze, his eyes darkening, but Elara squeezed Lyra's hand and moved forward. "Do not be afraid," she whispered. "We are here together." The shadows reacted to her courage, flickering but not advancing. They entered the next vision, a woman, beautiful and sorrowful, reaching out for Malric as if to embrace him, only for her form to dissolve into mist. The air grew colder, and Elara could see Malric's chest tighten, the ghostly memories pressing on him like invisible hands. "You cannot run from this," Elara said gently, her voice steady. "You can face it. You are not alone." Malric turned toward her, his dark eyes meeting hers, and for a moment, the weight of his past, his grief, and the curse seemed to press down on them both. Then, slowly, he exhaled, as if releasing a part of the burden he had carried for years. Lyra stepped forward, small hands raised. "You must trust us," she said. "The curse feeds on fear. If you fear, it grows. If you hope, it weakens." Elara nodded, feeling a warmth spread through her despite the cold. She had never believed in magic, at least not in this way, but she understood that courage and love were as powerful as any spell. She reached out to Malric, her hand brushing his, and felt a spark, a flicker of connection that was both fragile and strong. The next trial came swiftly. The floor beneath them seemed to ripple like water, shadows rising into shapes that whispered doubt and despair. Elara felt them brushing against her heart, speaking of loneliness, of failure, of the dangers of love. The little girl's voice rang out, clear and commanding. "Do not listen. Only truth in your heart can guide you." Elara closed her eyes and thought of Lyra's small face, full of trust. She thought of the warmth she had felt in Malric's presence, even amid fear. She thought of the promise she had made to protect, to stand brave, to face the shadows, and when she opened her eyes, the shadows recoiled, twisting and shrinking into nothingness. Malric stepped forward, his own resolve building. "You are right," he said quietly. "I cannot let fear control me. The curse, it is not stronger than the heart." Together, they moved deeper into the room, each step revealing more images of loss, moments of regret, but also flickers of hope and love that had been buried beneath sorrow. They faced memories of ancestors who had loved and lost, who had tried to break the curse and failed. And each time, the strength of Ilara's heart, the courage of Lyra, and Malric's growing trust created a shield against the darkness. At last, they reached the center of the room, where a single light hovered. Faint, but warm. It pulsed gently, like a heartbeat, and the shadows around them recoiled entirely. The little girl stepped forward, placing her tiny hand on the glowing light. "This is the heart of the curse," she said. "It will test you one final time. You must show courage, loyalty, and love, or it will remain." Malric looked at her, then at Ilara, a mixture of fear and hope in his eyes. "Are you certain we can face it?" he asked. Ilara squeezed his hand. "We face it together. No matter what happens, we will not turn away." The light flared suddenly, blinding and warm, and the room seemed to dissolve around them. They were surrounded by visions, their deepest fears, their most painful memories, and their unspoken desires. Ilara saw herself alone, wandering the snow-covered streets, rejected and hopeless. She saw Malric as a young boy. Haunted by loss and the impossibility of love, she saw Lyra, small and fragile, standing in darkness, waiting for someone to care. And then, as if the light recognized their courage, it shifted. The visions began to change. The images of fear dissolved into moments of hope. Malric reaching out to comfort the child. Ilara standing strong and brave. Lyra smiling in trust. The warmth of connection, of shared courage, began to push the darkness away. Malric exhaled deeply, a long-held breath he did not realize he had been holding. "The curse. It is changing," he whispered. Ilara felt a warmth spread through her chest, stronger than the cold of the snow or the shadows around them. "It is because we faced it together," she said softly. Lyra clapped her hands, eyes shining. "You are ready," she said. "The curse. It listens to hearts that are true. And yours are true." For a moment, they stood in silence, the pulsing light bathing them in warmth and hope. The room seemed to breathe, as if relieved, and the shadows retreated entirely. Outside, the snow still fell, but it carried a softer, gentler glow, like the world itself had noticed their courage. But the moment of peace was brief. From the corner of the room, a cold, sharp wind swept through, carrying a whisper that made their skin prickle. "You have passed the first trial," the voice said, echoing like the wind through ancient halls. "But the heart that dares to love will face greater shadows yet." Ilara, Malric, and Lyra exchanged glances, understanding that the trials were far from over. The curse was weakened, but not gone, and somewhere, beyond the walls of the manor, forces older than the kingdom itself were stirring, ready to test the bonds they had just begun to form. Malric stepped closer to Ilara, his voice low and earnest. "You have no idea what you've done. How much you've changed the course of what was inevitable. But we must prepare. The curse will not forgive weakness." Ilara nodded, determination hardening in her heart. "We are ready. Whatever comes, we face it together." Lyra reached up and hugged them both, small arms wrapping around each in a circle of warmth. "Together," she said, her voice firm. The room's glow softened, the pulsing heartbeat of the curse quieting for now. And as they stood there, a bond forming stronger than any fear or magic, Ilara realized that she had found more than courage. She had found a family. One forged not by blood, but by trust, love, and the willingness to face the darkness together. The snow outside fell heavier, each flake a reminder of the world beyond the manor's walls, a world still full of mystery, danger, and magic. And as the night deepened, a faint shadow lingered at the edge of the estate, silent and watchful, promising trials that would demand everything from their hearts. Ilara tightened her grip on Lyra's hand, feeling Malric's presence beside her. They had passed the first trial, but the story was far from over. The snow had stopped, leaving the world outside Malric's estate quiet and still. The morning light reflected off the ice and frost, making the entire estate shimmer like a palace of glass. Inside, however, the manor felt alive, charged with anticipation. Alara, Malric, and Lyra gathered in the grand hall, knowing that the trials of the curse were not yet over. Alara looked at the little girl, whose eyes shone with both excitement and seriousness. "What must we do now?" she asked. Lyra stepped forward, placing her small hands on the glowing runes etched into the floor. "The heart of the curse still tests you. You have proven courage, but love is the final trial. The bonds you have formed must withstand the deepest darkness. Only then can the curse be broken." Malric's face grew solemn. "Love is not easy. It requires trust, forgiveness, and sacrifice. The curse feeds on fear and doubt. If we falter, it will strike where we are weakest." Alara nodded, determination hardening in her chest. She glanced at Malric, and then at Lyra. "We will not falter. Together, we face it." The runes beneath their feet pulsed with a soft light, and the room seemed to expand, stretching beyond the walls of the manor. Shadows gathered at the edges, not malicious but testing, observing. Shapes of sorrow, regret, and lost hope emerged, memories of ancestors who had failed. Visions of hearts broken by the curse. Alara felt a chill, but she did not step back. She held Lyra's hand tightly, and Malric's presence beside her provided a quiet strength. Each shadow that approached whispered doubts, fears, and questions. Can you love without regret? Can you trust without fear? Can you protect without losing yourself? Alara took a deep breath. She thought of the streets where she had been rejected, of the loneliness she had endured, and of the little girl who had chosen her. She thought of Malric's guarded heart, of the pain he carried, and of the faint warmth she had glimpsed beneath his cold exterior. Her heart filled with courage. "Yes," she whispered. "I can. We can." The shadows recoiled slightly, as if recognizing the truth in her voice. Malric stepped forward, his voice steady and strong. "I have feared love, feared loss, feared the curse. But no longer. We face it together." Lyra smiled faintly, and the runes beneath their feet glowed brighter. The shadows shifted, forming one last figure, a shape tall and dark, representing the curse itself. Its eyes gleamed, deep and infinite, and its voice echoed like the wind through the trees. "Only one heart may survive unbroken," it said. "One bond may endure. But love is a choice, not a guarantee." Alara stepped forward, her hand brushing Malric's. "Then we choose each other. Not because it is safe, but because it is right. Not because we are fearless, but because we are brave." The shadow seemed to hesitate, as if testing her words. Lyra's small hands glowed with a soft light, and she whispered, "Love is stronger than fear. Let it guide you." The room trembled slightly, the light of the runes merging with the warmth of their hearts. Alara felt something shift deep within her, a warmth that spread through her chest, radiating outward like sunlight breaking through a storm. The shadow wavered, its form flickering. Malric took her hand fully, his dark eyes locking with hers. "I have lived in shadows too long," he said quietly. "But with you, I am willing to hope, to trust, to love." The shadow's form began to unravel, twisting and shrinking as the light of their combined courage and love grew stronger. Lyra's glow intensified, bathing the entire hall in warmth. The cold, the fear, the sorrow, all of it began to fade, replaced by a sense of calm and peace. Alara looked at Malric, her heart swelling. "We did it," she whispered. "No," he said softly, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "We chose it. And that is what broke it." The runes beneath their feet pulsed one last time and then dimmed, leaving the room bathed in the soft golden light of the morning sun. The shadows were gone, and the house, once heavy with sorrow, felt alive and welcoming. Lyra ran to Alara, throwing her arms around her small neck. You did it, she exclaimed. You passed the final trial. Alara hugged her back, feeling a warmth unlike anything she had known. We did it together, she said, smiling down at the little girl. Malric stepped closer, a cautious hope in his eyes. It seems the curse is finally broken, he said, and we are free. Our Martai Markansas. Our Markansas. Our Markansas. Our Markansas. Our Markansas. Our Markansas. Ilara looked around the grand hall, taking in the warmth of the sun, the flicker of the fire, and the presence of those she now considered her family. She felt a deep sense of peace, tempered by the understanding that the trials they had faced had changed them forever. The curse may be gone, she said softly, but the memories, the lessons, they will remain, and we will carry them together. Malric nodded, reaching out to take her hand fully. Together, he agreed. Days passed, and life within the estate began to shift. The cold, harsh edges of the manor softened, rooms once dark and empty, filled with warmth, laughter, and light. Ilara found herself teaching Lyra to read and write, sharing stories of courage and hope, while Malric took tentative steps toward opening his heart fully, learning to trust in connection rather than fear. Evenings were spent in the great hall, watching the snow fall outside, sharing warmth by the fire, and telling tales of the past, of ancestors, of curses, and of the power of love that could overcome them. The bonds between them strengthened, not by magic alone, but by choice, courage, and the willingness to trust one another. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden light across the frost-covered gardens, Ilara and Malric stood together at the window. Lyra played nearby, her laughter echoing through the hall. It is strange, Ilara said softly. Malric glanced at her, a soft smile on his lips. Change is not always easy, he said. But love makes it possible. It brings light, even in the darkest places. Ilara nodded, feeling the truth in his words. She thought of the snow-covered streets where she had once been rejected, of the cold and loneliness she had carried, and of the little girl who had chosen her. Everything had led to this, to a new beginning filled with hope, courage, and family. Lyra ran up, tugging at their hands. Come, she said. It's time to see something magical. They followed her into the gardens, now transformed. The frost had melted slightly, revealing buds of green beneath the snow, tiny signs of life and renewal. The light shimmered on the icy branches, and the air felt alive, charged with magic and possibility. Ilara looked around, feeling a sense of awe. The estate, once haunted by sorrow and shadow, now felt like a home, warm, alive, and full of love. Lyra pointed to a small pond, its surface reflecting the sky like glass. The curse is gone, she said. And now, you can see its beauty. All of it. Because you chose love. Malric took Ilara's hand, and together they watched the reflection of the morning sun dance on the water. The cold was gone. Replaced by warmth, the shadows had lifted, and for the first time in many years, peace settled over the estate. Ilara smiled, feeling the weight of the past lift from her shoulders. We did it, she whispered again, this time with certainty. We created something new, something real. Malric looked at her, his dark eyes soft but steady. And we will protect it, he said. Together. No curse, no shadow, no fear can take it from us now. Lyra hugged them both, her small arms holding tightly. Together, she repeated, her voice full of joy and certainty. As the sun rose higher, casting golden light across the estate, Ilara realized that the journey was complete. The trials, the fears, the shadows of the past, all had been faced and overcome. Love, courage, and trust had proven stronger than any curse. And in that moment, she understood the true power of choice, the choice to love, to forgive, to hope, and to protect. The bonds they had forged would last, not because magic demanded it, but because their hearts chose it. The estate, once a place of sorrow, now echoed with laughter, warmth, and the quiet promise of new beginnings. Elara, Malric, and Lyra stood together, a family born not of circumstance, but of courage, trust, and love. The wind whispered softly through the trees outside, carrying the faint memory of shadows, but also a message of hope. Love has broken the chains. Shadows may linger, but hearts that are true will endure. Elara looked at Malric and Lyra, feeling a deep, unshakable peace. The winter of rejection was over. A new season had begun, one of hope, of family, and of hearts that would never falter again. And as they stood together, the snow sparkling around them, the future seemed brighter than any magic, warmer than any fire, and stronger than any curse.